This is Kerrigan & Company. I have to tell you, folks, I think lighting in your home is one of the most important things that you can do to keep the house updated. And when I need new lighting, I head to Lucia Lighting and Design. Their spectacular 10,000 square foot showroom inside a beautiful mansion in Lynn, Massachusetts is decorated with both architectural and decorative lighting in every single style. From crystal and traditional to contemporary and modern, the selection is absolutely unmatched. Whenever I'm looking for new lighting, as I mentioned, I head to Lucia Lighting and Design. And when I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking for, I rely on the expert guidance of their design team. I know that they can help me. Learn more and book your appointment today. It's Lucia Lighting. Hey everybody, it's Kim. Coming up on this edition of Kerrigan & Company, a Celtics legend talks about the second half of the Celtics season. This is Kerrigan & Company.
Kerrigan & Company is here for you. Yes, Kerrigan & Company is here for you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Kerrigan & Company. Good to have you with us for this episode, and we've got a great show coming your way. We're going to talk a little bit about the movies, because who's keeping me company today knows a lot about the movies, but of course it's also just about Oscar time, and it's great fun to do some predictions, and we're going to have somebody who comes in and talks to us a little more about that. And then we have to talk about the Celtics. Of course, we're headed into the second half of the season, a season that looks like it could be very successful, but a little bumpier than it was just 1 year ago this time. And the person who's keeping me company can talk about that as well. I am so pleased to have Gary Tanguay with me today. Good to see you.
Cam, how are you? Good to see you.
Look at you, multitasking today. You can be a co-host and then you can also be an expert on all these different issues.
Well, when you start in radio like I did, you just have to talk. And I remember I started at WEEI when it was 590, and it was none of this two-host thing. It was like you had 4 hours and it was just you.
Okay, now you've just said something to me that I didn't even know. It was 590?
It was 590. Oh, yeah. When EEI was all sports, we were in the Schrafft's building. It used to be News Radio 590. It was owned by CBS. And then they flipped it, and the Celtics owned it at the time. And they went to all sports. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. Keep in mind, I arrived in the Boston area in 93, so it was prior to 93.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, long before that.
Yeah. So you started as a baby on radio.
Oh, yeah. I think I was like 24 or something. And I was, my God, Eddie was in the afternoon. Dale was in the midday. And they would say to you, Tanguay, on Saturday, I would follow Jimmy Myers. You're on from 10 to 3, just me.
Go.
And go. And what I tell people for television, because I do teach at Emerson, get behind a mic and start talking.
Yeah.
No scripts.
Right.
You got to have it up here. We were talking about this earlier. You can't depend on a prompter. You have to be able to know your stuff. Radio, podcasting, audio, however you want to term it,
sure,
is a great training ground for television, film acting, and that's where I started. So it was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to play opera music, Kim. At WRUM in Rumford, Maine. I know I'm getting off topic.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
No, I grew up in Rumford, Maine, a small town.
You went to, wait a minute, hold on. You went to Abbott Elementary, yes?
Yeah. Well, yes, I did. It was Abbott School.
I read that and I'm like,
yeah, it was Abbott School.
And he went to Mexico High School. Now, how does this happen?
Yeah, Mexico High School, Mexico, Maine was right across the river from Rumford, which is a paper mill town.
Yeah.
In Maine, it's kind of crazy because in that area, there was obviously an international influence because it was Mexico, Maine, Sweden, Maine, Norway, West Paris, East Paris, South Paris.
They were dreamers there.
I guess they were dreamers. And but I knew what I wanted to do. In high school, I would play sports. I played baseball and basketball, and then I worked on Saturday nights at the local radio station above J.J. Newberry's. Yeah. And it was opera music. And I just wanted to that's how I got my start.
I'll tell you something. What now in retrospect, right? Age does give you this opportunity to look back and say, wow, that was really smart. That made you such a well-rounded person.
Oh, yeah, it was a great experience.
At the time, you had no idea. You were just like, give me a job and I'll do whatever, right?
I'll tell you this one. Do you remember the first time you went on television?
I do. First time. Yes, I do.
I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
And it was at New England Cable News, and God bless Jimmy Young. I was filling in for him, and I was driving down from Maine, and then it just hit me in the parking lot that I was like, oh, my God, I'm going to be on Boston television. And then because I could talk, And because I had done radio, I just talked.
Yeah.
And I talked and I talked and I talked, and then I was fine.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I didn't panic the first time I was on TV. The first time I was on TV was in college because I went to the University of Missouri and they had an NBC affiliate.
That's a big school.
So,
Yeah,
that was pretty lucky. Not that I was smooth and comfortable, but it wasn't as bad as my first time that I went on radio. And I actually went on WRKO, and I was filling in for somebody on a weekend, and they wanted to see how I would do. And it was essentially, and I was alone, and they essentially did just what they said to you: sit down,
Swim.
Kim, and talk. And I just remember feeling so panic stricken.
Oh, yeah.
Because I will say at that point, I had been used to my microphone does not want to cooperate. It's taken on a life of its own today. For those of you who can't see me and are listening, my mic is all crazy. I was someone who did rely on a teleprompter for certainly a portion of my life. It wasn't that I couldn't talk off of it, but I was never anybody who ever used the word I.
Right.
Because on TV you don't use that word
say that, no.
ever.
Right.
So
You're
then
a conduit.
right.
Yeah, now this is you.
3 hours of me.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even like me that much.
Oh, by the time you get done, you're sick of it.
Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I remember when I was starting out, we would get like 2 calls a show. And this one guy called, and literally the caller said, "Gary, I have to go now." Swear to God. And Rick Radzik, who's the program director at the Sports Hub, which I started out with him 100 years ago, has never let me forget that. We were floored. Gary, I gotta go.
Oh, God, but I can so relate to that.
Oh.
And in retrospect now, too, did you like taking calls? I don't really like the caller thing.
I think the caller thing has died out. I don't think people are interested in it anymore. I think people want this. They want natural conversation. Right. But if you do a 4-hour show, you kind of have to. And the calls are almost like records. What record? God, I'm dating myself. What songs used to be on the radio is they kind of get you from one point to another.
Sure.
But it's not. We're not caller driven like we used to be.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, you still have a call-in show because you fill in for Dan Ray.
Fill in for Dan, but I'm
nights.
not Dan. Okay, I'll tell you right now. When people start talking politics and they go right and left, the problem now is you can't change anybody's mind.
Right.
You cannot.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we were talking about Nightmare that Casey Sherman is producing, and I play Norman Mailer. I saw an interview with Norman Mailer where he said we used to debate, and one of the reasons that he was so outrageous is he wanted to stimulate thought. I mean, he was out of his mind. But he would give you 3 ideas, 2 were crazy, 1 was worth debating. And his point was, just before his death, he said, now, we don't even debate. I mean, you can't even debate, Kim.
No.
And that's the problem, is so when I do the talk for Dan, I try to have a lot of guests.
Good.
I can't change anybody's mind.
No.
So I'm not going to try.
Listen, you approach it the way I think is smart at this stage of the game, and certainly right now, because you're right, debate doesn't exist anymore. There's no such
and that's
thing.
dangerous.
Well,
the
it is.
exchange of ideas is dangerous because I do believe politically, if you talk to people, most everybody has an opinion or a belief that crosses the aisle. Mm-hmm. Well, on this issue, I lean a little to the left. But on this issue, I lean a little to the right. And I believe that's the majority of America.
Yeah.
But now we have to pick sides. I got to be one or the other, and that's dangerous.
You bet it is. It sure is. You have spent a lot of your life in sports.
Right.
Which is great. Congratulations
great
to
town.
you.
Phenomenal
No
town.
kidding. You couldn't be in a better place.
The Patriots won all those Super Bowls.
Oh, I'm telling you. Right. I got to tell you something just very quickly. Not that this is, I want to talk about you, but I always wanted to do sports. And I went to college with the idea at the University of Missouri I was going to do sports. And it was someone there who convinced me not to, only because at the time, women weren't that accepted in the world of sports. So I made the decision not to. Best decision I've ever made.
Correct.
But having said that, I look at a guy like you and I think, wow, good for you that you followed that dream in a city like this one. Because if I would have done it, this would have been the kind of city I would have wanted to be in.
Well, it was a great place
because,
to work.
Because how much fun.
And I grew up in Maine, so every summer we would come down. We would go to one Red Sox game. My dad would take us, my mom, dad, my sister would go sitting, down the right field line and would watch the game, or, we'd go to one Celtics game a year. And so I always wanted to be in Boston.
Sure.
Quick story. The reason I'm doing it, I love acting. I love writing. I've written 10 screenplays. I've written a novel. We're doing this. This is the third play I've done with Casey. I had a crossroads in my life when I was younger, in my 20s, where I was going to New York and I was taking classes. I would go down to, New York. I'd go to HB Studios,
Sure.
or, go into a class and they'd say, find your inner animal and roll around on the floor like a cat.
Act out your favorite color.
So when you do that, though,
Yeah,
getting behind a mic to do sports is easy.
I'm sure.
So I tell every young journalism kid, if you want to be on TV, take an acting class because
Mm-hmm.
it'll loosen you up and you'll lose your inhibitions. But I was about to make the move to go to New York to give it a go. And that's when I got a call to fill in at Channel 56 to do sports. It was Michael Barkan, who's now in Philadelphia, who I still talk to today. Frank Malicote went to Detroit. They needed a fill-in guy on the weekends. And I just completely fell into it. Wow. And I did that, and that's how I ended up staying.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you told that story because I wanted to transition into,
Right.
the fact that you are an actor, which I got to tell you, I sort of feel like television is acting and
course it
radio
is. It's performing.
acting. It's performing. Thank you.
Performing.
That's a better way to put it.
Kim, I remember you on television. You were terrific. Like when you were on Channel 7, this is going to be kind of maybe creepy. I was watching you a little too closely. You had a certain rhythm. You had a certain immediacy to your delivery. When you worked with Jack was the same thing. When Jack Williams spoke, it was important, okay? And you worked with Jack, and you have a certain rhythm and a certain cadence. That's your persona. That's your character. It's important. Now, people in the J world get offended if there is a J world left, journalism.
Right.
Get offended when I say that. I'm not saying that you're making it up.
No.
I'm not saying that you're inaccurate. But whether you're, doing the Today Show or, Kim and Jack on BZ or whatever, there's still a sense of performing.
Absolutely.
It's not like you're telling the news as if you're sitting at the kitchen table.
No, right. That's exactly
You have
right.
to perform the news.
You do.
Accurately.
You do. So it was a natural transition for you.
Well, I loved it.
But I'm not even sure if it was a transition. I think you were doing both at the same time.
Yeah,
really,
I've always
right?
done it. I loved doing plays in high school. I used to audition for the lead and I can't sing. Oh my God, I'm so tone deaf. It's like the dogs are barking. But I did, when I was working in Worcester, when I first started out, I was working in Worcester. I did plays in Worcester.
Good for you.
Yeah, we did a play called, I did a play in Dover, New Hampshire when I was working in radio in Portsmouth. We rented out a function room at a hotel, which was called the Exit 8 Motel off the Spalding Turnpike, okay? That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you sure you want to tell me more?
Yeah, but we got a great deal on the ballroom.
I bet.
So, and we set up, and Mark Miller was the director, who's the production director at the radio station, and it was called Breakfast with Les and Bess, and we set up a stage in the middle, and we did it in a round. Oh, fun. And then I did plays in the Portsmouth Academy of Performing Arts, did the Players Ring, and the thing that was great for me is I always got to play different characters. Like I was in an off-Broadway play, it was an off-Broadway play starring Mark Hamill. We did it in Portsmouth, New Hampshire called The Nerd, where I got to play a nerd.
Fun.
So I have this persona of the guy with the voice and the hair.
Yeah.
So when like in Casey's play, I get to play a nut job.
Yeah.
So I get to bust out of that persona because I'm really tired of it. I really am.
Yeah. Well, listen, we have got so much to talk about when it comes to you because we have to get into the whole thing about the acting. You've been in some really fabulous movies.
I've been lucky. Boston's a great town for film.
It's really impressive, Gary. It really is. And then on top of it, this relationship that you have with Casey, a dear friend of mine and a great friend of Kerrigan and Company and just, so we want to talk about all that, and that's coming up at the Wilbur. So that's all yet to come, folks. So be sure you stay with us. But in the meantime, and we've told you this before, we frequently talk with our co-hosts to see who would you like to talk to, what would you like to talk about. So you decided it would be fun to talk about movies, obviously, because here we are right at the... Have you seen very many of the movies?
I've seen most of them. I haven't... We're going to talk to Cooper, who I have on BZ Radio quite often. She's a film critic, entertainment reporter for CBS. I actually talked to Casey yesterday about the Dylan movie with Chalamet, and I wasn't going to see it because everybody said it was horrible. He goes, no way, you got to see it. He goes, it's fantastic. So I have to see that. And but I have seen most of them other than that.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few of them as well. I haven't seen that one either, and I do want to see it.
I do want to see it.
I want to see what would push Chalamet into becoming his character off screen.
It's so hard.
It's so,
to me to take on those roles.
Well,
I don't know.
You're right, and it's big. It's a big one.
It's a big one.
So anyway, so Cooper's coming up next. We're going to talk about what she anticipates is going to happen on March the 3rd, 2nd, 3rd.
They're a book.
Right around there,
At
wherever
this
the
point,
Academy
Kim,
Award is.
At this stage, Kim, I ballpark everything.
That first part of
Early March.
All right, stay with us, everybody. Yeah, it's March the 2nd. This is Kerrigan & Company. Mobsters, serial killers, movie stars, and con men. America's most notorious crimes come alive in A Nightmare with Casey Sherman, an immersive new true crime stage show coming to the Wilbur Theater on March the 26th. Join best-selling author Casey Sherman, along with acclaimed actor John Fiore of The Sopranos, comic legend Steve Sweeney, and a cast of incredible actors as they take you on an immersive, terrifying journey through America's most shocking crimes. Proceeds from A Nightmare with Casey Sherman will benefit the Pete Frates Family Foundation, which supports local patients living with ALS. Get your tickets to A Nightmare with Casey Sherman coming to the Wilbur Theater on March the 26th at thewilbur.com. That's thewilbur.com. This segment of Kerrigan & Company is brought to you by Lucia Lighting and Design, where people in the know go for the best possible lighting and design experience. Welcome back, everybody, to Kerrigan & Company. So glad you could be with us for this episode. Keeping me company today is Gary Tanguay. You all know him. You know the voice. You know the face. Gary, everybody knows you.
Sure. I don't know. Run with that.
You know what I almost said.
Maybe not. Everybody over 35. We'll leave it at that.
I was just saying, you don't want anybody to say, "Oh, you're a legend," because a legend to me just always goes,
you're dead.
Really?
Yeah, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly. You were kind enough to introduce us to our next guest. I'm really excited about this. So because
Cooper.
Of that,
it works for. She's an entertainment reporter out of New York. Works for CBS. Cooper Lawrence. I've had her on WBZ a number of times. She's a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to talk Oscars, and she's outstanding.
Absolutely. Cooper, great to have you on Kerrigan & Company. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You're in New York. Are you psyched up about the Academy Awards? Is this something, we're in the midst of award season. Is that a fun thing for you?
As an entertainment reporter, I always am excited about this sort of thing. Everybody else is like, breaking news, and then something happens with politics. I'm like, how nice for you. No, anything entertainment, the Oscars. This is like the Super Bowl for us. So I'm really excited. Yeah, this is my time to shine.
There you go.
Well, I think it's a great lineup. I know some people feel like Amelia Perez. There's obviously controversy there, which we can get into. But the argument is, 8 people saw it. Well, I don't really care about that. What we have, I feel, is diversity in so many ways with the films. You have so many different kinds of films that people are looking at for Best Picture and Best Actor and Best Actress. That's what I like to see, Cooper. A lot of different themes here.
That's a really good point, Gary. This is one of the first years that it's not like all art films or all films that are very similar. No, you're right. There's a movie out there for everybody. Anora is like kind of an independent film, but kind of sexy in a way. And then you have Conclave, which is a much bigger budget film that's kind of exciting. And then you have a horror film really in the substance. So every single genre is pretty much represented.
Even Wicked, right?
Right.
So Wicked,
musical.
they're part of the open.
Yeah.
From what I understand, right?
Exactly.
So I can't wait to see that.
Let me go back to Amelia Perez. I'm one of the 8 who saw it. You saw it, obviously.
Saw it too.
So now, look, we have
3 out of 8
of the 8 who saw it. I have to tell you, my husband saw it too. We really liked it. I really liked that movie. I thought it was really, really good. But I thought it was really strange that it was a musical. I thought that added absolutely nothing to that film. It didn't distract for me, but it didn't add anything.
But see, didn't you think it was odd how you're in the middle of a scene, you're like, oh, this is really intense, what's happening to this character, and then suddenly they just break out into song, and it's, it felt really odd to me. I see what you're saying, and they were trying to do something very original and unique, which is why the critics went nuts for it, especially at all the film festivals.
Sure. Let's talk about the controversy surrounding it, though, and we don't want to give it away for people who maybe haven't seen the film, but the lead actress is a transgendered actress. Mm-hmm. You go
That's
from
not even
there.
the controversy. So there's been a million things going on with this film from the very beginning. So if you, like me, saw it early and thought, oh, what a lovely film, then afterwards you found out that the Mexican-American community was upset with it because it was not representative at all of how they treat people of LGBTQ. And then you found that the trans community didn't like it either because they didn't like how they were portrayed. And then we find out that the film is being made by a French person who is basically, you know, kind of like a tourist filming was what they were calling. So that was the first controversy. And then Carla Sofia, the first thing she does is, she's out there getting all these accolades and all these nominations. And what they do is they do a deep dive into her tweets. And they find that she said some very unkind things. In fact, some very controversial, terrible things about George Floyd, about other communities.
Right.
And she was really just awful and mean. And she sort of apologized, but not really. And it was enough of a controversy that the director stepped away from her, Netflix stepped away from her. So, are the Oscars going to step away from her? Originally, this was the film to beat, and now it looks like this has really tanked it.
I think, absolutely, Cooper. I think Zoe Saldana has a chance. I love her in Lioness, and I really appreciate the fact that she's been able to show her face, because we know she's been in the Marvel films, right?
Right.
That's right.
And, but now we see her, and I think she's phenomenal. Hopefully it doesn't hurt her, though I think Demi Moore is going to give her a run for her money.
Well, I don't think they're in the same.
Yeah, I think she's supporting.
I think
Zoe Saldana is supporting.
Right.
So she's going to win. I think Zoe Saldana should win.
Yeah.
So she's supporting. I'm sorry. Well, let's get to Demi Moore, who I think could win Best. Now, I think could win Best Actress.
I love that you're going out on a limb and saying that after she won the Directors Guild, the Critics' Choice, the Golden Globe.
You never
really,
know.
You think she's going to win?
You never know.
Well, what's interesting is that those things are very predictive. So far, every single year for the past, 20 or some odd years, the Directors Guild, the Producers Award, the Critics' Choice, that's all very predictive of who wins the Oscars. So I think if you are in a Oscar pool this year, you do well choosing Demi Moore.
I thought she was terrific in the movie. I thought the movie was a shock. I do have to say, and I've told everyone who has asked me about it since I've seen it, first off, it is a horror film, and you do need to know it's a horror film. I was just saying to Gary, I think the message behind the film is great, and I got it in the first hour, and that movie could have stopped for me after the first hour.
Yeah, I think that's one of the criticisms, that it could have been edited a little bit better. But when you watch her performance, you have to ask yourself, is this an Oscar-winning performance? Absolutely it is.
Yeah,
when you
no
compare to some of the other people that she's up against, you're like, yeah, that was fine. Yeah, I guess that person's a decent actor. But that was an Oscar-winning performance.
Right.
She went there. Without giving anything away, obviously, there are scenes where, as an actress who has been valued for her looks her entire career, here are these scenes where she has to be very ugly.
Yep.
Ugly is like the understatement. But she talks about it, how difficult it was for her on a lot of levels, but just decided to give over to the character.
Yeah.
I thought she was awesome. I appreciated the movie because it was a big swing. Without giving too much away, you're right. You got to be ready for this movie.
You do.
You got to be ready. But I appreciated how it started on the Walk of Fame and how it ended on the Walk of Fame.
Right.
Which pretty much wrapped it all up and set it up. So I think, as a film exercise, it's probably a little like homework. But if you love movies, you should watch it. My wife has no interest in it. I mean, my wife has watched Law & Order, like she's seen every episode 3 times. Because she goes, I want Mind Candy, I'll watch Clueless. She doesn't want homework for a movie. If you love movies, if you're a cinephile, I think you need to see it.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's an important film to see for even for the cinematography. It has an edge to it that is very unique. I just think there's a lot of reasons why people should watch it.
Swing.
At least watch the first 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I got to the last 10 minutes, and what I unfortunately had to do is I had to do this and just watch the frames go by, and I knew exactly what was happening. I just couldn't live in it.
You're kind of a wimp, huh?
I am.
Yeah,
I'll be the first to admit.
kind of a wimp.
What do you think? Which one do you think is the winning film this year? I loved Conclave, by the way. I thought it was terrific.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. So here's the thing that's very, very interesting. So usually, again, what is predictive of the Oscars? Because since we've had all these other awards, so usually it's the Directors Guild and the Golden Globes, and sometimes it's the BAFTAs, but not this year. It doesn't look like it. What's really interesting is that Anora is the film that keeps winning all the awards. It keeps getting Best Picture everywhere.
Yeah.
But nobody factored in what they call the Ralph Fiennes effect. Now think about this one when I tell it to you. Ralph Fiennes, every single time he has been nominated for a film, and the movie's been nominated also, the movie wins. There's something about the films he chooses. If you think Constant Gardener, English Patient, go back on some of the films that he has been in, you will see that as he was nominated, the films all won Best Picture. So here we are again, where he's nominated and Conclave is up for Best Picture. So will we have a quadruple Pete? I can't say three-peat because this keeps going on with Ralph Fiennes. So even though Anora is the film that is supposed to win because it won everywhere else, the Ralph Fiennes effect is coming in here, and I think Conclave may actually be able to take it.
It was brilliant.
I loved it.
Brilliant. Just the whole, and it's so hard to me to make a movie compelling that was, quite frankly, slow. Like, if I read the script, I would have been, this might be a little too slow, right. But it's just a great story with great actors, Stanley Tucci, Ralph Fiennes, as you said. I thought it was terrific. For me, I love The Apprentice. I loved The Apprentice. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I thought the acting was great. I think it's very underrated.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it has no shot this year.
But
only because of the subject matter, and we're talking about Hollywood,
right.
And I think they just don't want to promote or at least encourage a film that's about Donald Trump because, they've had enough of him. He's in our faces every single day, and I think that there's a bias towards the film because of the subject matter, which is a shame because the acting in it is phenomenal.
Amazing.
The storyline it's really well written, too. So I think if people are sleeping on that one, I think they should at least go see it.
All right. So what will be the big surprise? There's always one surprise, and there's always somebody who's kind of shut out.
Right. So I think this year, the surprise is going to be, I think Anora is going to be shut out more than people realize, even though it won everywhere else. Mm-hmm. I just don't think it's a big enough Hollywood film with big enough Hollywood names attached to it.
Right.
I think Hollywood has had, they've taken that hit before with Moonlight and other films that were wonderful, but really small, with actors that people didn't really know at the time. I mean, maybe they're more famous now, but at the time people were like, who is that?
Sure.
So I think that they are really going to be leaning into big Hollywood because they need the attention right now. Mm-hmm. But I will warn you, if you're watching the Oscars because you want the glitz and glam, you will get some of that, but it's going to be all about the LA fires. The LA wildfires just happened in January. Right. It's going to be top of mind for everybody. It's going to be one of the things that they are going to continue to talk about. And I've heard that they're going to have first responders there. So it's going to be very much like other award ceremonies that have taken place in LA over the past couple of weeks.
Well, and as it should. And what people need to remember, because I do have friends that work in the industry, Cooper does too, is not everybody is Tom Hanks.
Right.
There are people that have homes and mortgages and college payments, and they go to work every day, whether they're sound or behind the scenes or makeup, that, Hollywood really is a factory town. It's a factory.
Sure,
it
absolutely.
Very much so,
and
You're so right.
There's a lot of people that have been hurt by this, so I'm glad they have not forgotten that.
And have you heard what Danny DeVito is doing?
No.
Tell us.
So Danny DeVito and Steve Carell and Vince Vaughn, the three of them have something in common, and it's the fact that they're huge LA Kings fans. They're huge hockey fans. So they're partnering with the hockey team, and they're doing like a charity hockey game where they're going to play with some of the most famous former hockey players. Picture little Danny DeVito, 4'10", with his hockey stick. But they're doing this. Yeah, they're doing this at the SoFi or whatever arena that they play hockey. I don't really know sports ball very well, but I do know this. And they're going to try to raise money. That's going to be the whole thing. And first responders are also going to be playing. So it'll be like a really fun charity event that we're waiting to see if it's going to be televised.
That's great. That's a great thing. Well, listen, this has been fun. Thank you very much. I'm so glad. What's your favorite? We didn't ask you. What was your favorite film of the? Yeah.
My favorite film was The Brutalist.
The Brutalist.
I just thought the story was so unpredictable. I didn't know where it was going. A lot of the other storylines, I was like, I kind of see where this is heading.
Right.
The Brutalist, I found really unpredictable. I know it's very long. They give an intermission, which is good, so you can go tinkle. But that was my favorite film because the acting across the board was just phenomenal. And Adrian Brody's going to win the Oscar.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. That's the only one I haven't seen.
Well, me too, because you have to go to the theater.
I know.
And I'm too damn lazy to go to the theater.
Cooper, thank you so much for being part of the show today. This was very, very fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Cooper, thank you. CBS Entertainment. Cooper, she's the best out of New York.
Absolutely. This is Kerrigan & Company. I have great news to share. Lucia Lighting and Design has extended its annual Red Tag sale through the end of February. Head to Lucia Lighting and Design at 311 Western Avenue in Lynn before the end of February for the best deals of the year. Lucia has hundreds of items with red sale tags on them, and that means 50% off. These are beautiful, one-of-a-kind display pieces at incredible prices. Don't wait. Get to Lucia Lighting and Design before the end of February for their extended Red Tag sale. Learn more about my favorite lighting and design store at lucialighting.com.
If you like rum, you're going to love Rumson's Rum, New England's most award-winning rum brand. Rumson creates distinctive and savory flavor profiles by hand-selecting and marrying the finest barrel-aged Caribbean rums. The spirits are then blended and finished in the New England Rum House. Choose from Rumson's Gold, Spiced, Grand Reserve, or Coffee Rum, which is smooth and sweet with a warm roasted coffee flavor, a hint of vanilla, and a decadent buttery finish. Find Rumson's at liquor stores or ask for it at your favorite restaurant. Learn more at rumsons.com. That's rumsons.com. Rumsons. Life lived, life enjoyed.
Welcome back, everybody, to Kerrigan & Company. Great to have you with us. Gary Tanguay keeping me company today. That was a lot of fun. Cooper was terrific.
Yeah, she's the best.
She really is.
Yeah, you need to follow her on Instagram, social media. She's very plugged in.
Yeah, she was a lot of fun, and I think she's probably right on the money. I wrote down some of the ideas that she said, the people that she thinks are going to win and whatever.
Right.
We'll see how many of those she has correct. Okay, so that's part of your life, the acting world. You have another part of your life, as we've talked about, and that's the sports world, and most specifically, the Celtics.
Right.
I know that you do a lot related to the Celtics, and the next guest is somebody who knows a little bit about the Celtics and basketball as well. Cedric Maxwell is with us, of course, a former Celtic and just an all-around terrific guy, and it's great to have you here, sir. Good to see you.
Well, good morning. Well, good afternoon. Good evening. Good afternoon. That's what I should say. It is a pleasure to be with you guys. I'm excited. Anytime Gary calls me, I'm always running, going, okay, Gary, what do we need to do now?
He's amazing.
And he's always done the right thing.
When I was teaching, Max came in and spoke to the students. He was phenomenal.
Did they almost die?
They did, and the part of it is he was holding court after. They were all surrounding him after. I said, we got to go, Max. They have a class next. So he's one of the good ones.
Well, it's super great to see you. Here we are seeing you just as the All-Star break's coming to an end. I was saying at the very beginning of the show, we're sitting here at the Garden right now, by the way. And, so we're surrounded by, the Celtics everywhere. And certainly we've had a good first half of the season, not quite like we had a year ago as we go into this second half. So I'm just going to ask you right straight up, where you stand when it comes to the Celtics in the second half of this season. What do you think's going on here?
I think they're going to have a great second half of the season. And the first half of the season wasn't bad. I think they set the standard last year. They played so well. But I think, as Gary would know, that everybody thought that they were going to fall flat on their face at the end of the day. A lot of people did not think. There's a guy named Michael Felker, who's the devil, who said that the Celtics were going to fall flat on their face. They weren't going to win it, and da-da-da. And when they won it, he's still complaining right now, saying, "Oh, they shoot too many threes." Dude, they won. They won it. So I think they set a standard.
Yeah. And
they haven't played as well this year, especially at home. They've still been one of the most outstanding road teams around.
Yes.
In the history of the NBA. They just haven't played as well home. I think they're going to take care of home. And Joe Mazzulla said, and I talked to him, the head coach of the Celtics, he said, one thing I'm going to have to do is be patient. and understand that we're going to have stretches we're not going to play as well. But he feels like in the second half of this season, they're going to play much better. And they have to understand that they are the hunted, not the hunter. And because when you go to a building, you're the world champions, you get everybody's best effort. And say you go to Washington. Washington hasn't won a handful of games. Well, if they beat you, that's their playoff game.
Sure.
Right.
So the Celtics have to maintain their posture and understand that every night they go out, they're going to be bulletin board material for somebody else.
Well, Max, you know all about that. Winning 2 championships in Boston, being an NBA Finals MVP.
I love how deep this guy's voice is. I just love it. I love how he says it.
Between the two of you, MVP. I'm just sort of,
He's the man. I've been trying to tell him. I'm still mad at him because I said, Gary, you and I should be someplace doing a podcast, and we should be right now training young broadcasters, especially these players coming in the league, how to talk to the media. There's so much money to be made, not only on our side, on their side. I just don't have time. Hey, but you're down at a damn lacrosse game with your son enjoying that. But okay, never mind.
That's exactly right, Max.
Right, that's where you're supposed to be.
And they don't want to listen to me, believe me. But, Max, I don't want to go old man basketball here. So you could set me straight. I believe the Celtics will win the championship again this year. What can be, because I think they're the most talented, and I also think their star player, Jason Tatum, will do whatever it takes to win. Last year, he got defensive rebounds, and that's why they won. So, but what gets frustrating for me as a fan is I sit down and watch a game, and whether it's Washington or whoever, and I go, these guys could play a lot better than they are. When you played, there wasn't really a letdown. I remember the one story you told where there was one team that was in the hunt for the first half, and then I think you turned to the crowd and said, "You can all go home now because it's over." Was that? Do you remember that story?
Yes, I do. I mean, that was my goal. And I know I shouldn't say it's on your podcast, but my goal was to make kids cry. And especially if we're on the road. I love that. Like, hey, we lost the game. I'd be like, Dad, take him home now because this is not going to get any better for the rest of this time. But I think that, Gary, we look at old man basketball, and sometimes we don't remember. We don't remember that Larry Bird's team with Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and Cedric Maxwell, and then they got swept by the Milwaukee Bucks in 1983 before they came back and won it again the next year. So we can think how teams are. Would you ever think that Robert Parrish's team, Kevin McHale, those guys would get swept by anybody in the NBA, especially during their prime? So I think that we don't really look at history the way it is and have to understand there's going to be highs and lows. Joe Mazzulla said this to me the other day. He walks around with his rosy beads before a game, and I talked to him. He said, this is what I want to do. I want to win multiple championships. That's my goal for this team. Multiple championships, like back-to-back. That's going to help a Tatum. That's going to help a Brown. That's going to help them identify themselves with the great Celtic teams of the past. Right now, by winning one with the Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum, Brown, that's not enough in Boston.
Right. Sure.
And then when you have Brady looking over your shoulder, and this is a city of winners. You think of this. This is one of the all-time great cities. Some cities never get a chance to celebrate like this. Celebrate. Like when and what and where are you celebrating?
Right.
We're spoiled.
Let me ask you guys this. I think one of the great things about that team at the end of the season last year was the dynamic between the players. Talk about the dynamic between the players this season. Is it the same? We never saw egos on the court last season. Are things starting to shift? I would naturally think they would to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the dynamic.
I think any relationship, there's going to be growth. And there's going to be somebody who wants to do more. We can look at wives and, husbands and wives and said, the dynamics of the relationship change from year to year. Eventually, when a man comes into the house, he's always whipped. Eventually, when he leaves the house, he's still whipped. He stays in that same position. We are listeners. We respond. But I think in the Boston Celtics case, the dynamics where you look at one of the relationships which was fascinating to me was looking at Kristaps Porzingis and Jaylen Brown. And those two guys, you never really saw Brown smile as much. But last year he was smiling, and him and Kristaps, they called themselves cookies and cream. Yeah. Because and Ben and Jerry's would not be happy with that, but they called themselves cookies and cream. And they played like that. They played with a certain amount of passion and happiness. Mm-hmm. And Tatum, I think he's got a relationship right now with, could be any of those players out there. He understands what they have to do to win. But I think you're going to see this team, I think the second half of the season, they're going to play much better. And the first half of the season really was like a blur because of all the games. This team has already played 50 games.
Right.
But you only have about 2 months, maybe 2 months to go right now. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have another 31 games in 2 months, and the schedule is going to be much more beneficial, and I think they're going to play much better.
Derek White also had a career year last year, and he ran into a tough spot a bit, so there was an unfair expectation placed on him, I believe.
He said, but Gary, he set a standard. If a player goes out in anything you do in life, if you go out and set a standard, then the expectation level is that you're going to maintain that. It was unfair because he was unreal. He was damn near an all-star. He should have been an all-star last year. I think he's kind of leveled out. He's still a great player. And if you look at the health of this team, is Kristaps Porzingis at the end of the year, is he going to be healthy? That's going to be one of the keys. This team has a ton of three-point shooters. They can defend. They can change. I like the attitude of Joe Mazzulla, challenging his players. So I think they still have a tremendous amount of growth that can be there. And on top of that, you look at this team, being sold. Wick is, I think his family's trying to get out of it.
Does that have an impact?
So what?
Does that have an impact? If you're a player, are you thinking about that?
I think you do. I think you're trying to find out who your owner is, who is the governor, Right. The governor of the team is. You want to know, what direction they want to go in. Because sometimes people don't want to spend as much money, or they might want to change gears with your players. So that's very important to players now these days. I mean, once you and I, we go out and we put our, $150 and $200 in, then we're going to get our share of the team that you and I can buy, and we can make decisions. And so we'll go at it that way.
Well, after you and I,
why are you scratching your head when I say that? You trying to find the money?
No. Because when I talk to you, I often scratch my head. It's going to be all the money we make from that media coaching.
That's
business.
right. You guys are going to buy a big chunk of the Celtics.
No, I'm going to make a movie and I'm going to put cornbread in it. That's how we're going to make all the money.
There you go.
There you go. You just hit. Tell everybody where cornbread comes from.
That came from a movie called Cornbread, Earl and Me. Yep. And it starred Jamal Wilkes, who was a basketball player during the 70s. And he played with these kids, and these young kids, and he was just befriended them, and they were great kids. And then Jamal was running through the ghetto at that time, and and there was a robbery. And he was just running through, and he got police mistaken him as a robber, shot him, killed him. And his friends, it was Cornbread, Earl, and Me. Well, Earl was one guy, but Me, that role was played by Larry Fishburne. Mm-hmm. And I saw Larry Fishburne when he was in Boston, walking down the street over near the Commons. And I walked up to him. I told him who I was. He said, man, I was 8 years old when he did that movie. But my friend said I looked like Jamal at that time. I played basketball. We had the same kind of color eyes. And they started calling me Cornbread. And they said it in front of some reporters at the NIT Invitational in the 1976. And as soon as that reporter heard the word cornbread, he wrote that down, and the left went, and it went on. And it's really funny, though. But people who identify me, they don't, if you don't know me, you might call me cornbread. But if you know me, normally right now, you're just calling me Max.
Yeah, we never call it. I've never called you Cornbread. I just call you Max.
No. So it's a cute name. You know, I think I've grown kind of beyond it now with my other professional career, but I still keep it because it's a cute name to go along with people who are like, sometimes they'll identify you at a game. And I was at the Laker game and they said, Cornbread Maxwell is here in the store, is here in the building right now, you know, watching this Laker, you know, Celtic thing. And and it's really kind of cool. I think one of the coolest things is the fact that, you know, I still think about the Lakers Celtics. They did the 30 for 30. Celtics-Lakers rivalry.
I just saw that,
And Jason Tatum was on the team at that time. It's maybe his second year, and he was speaking to me. He was friendly to me. And so he comes out one game. He comes out before a game, ready to shoot, and he goes yelling out, Cornbread, Cornbread, Cornbread. I'm like, dude, what's wrong with you? He goes, man, I saw you on that 30 for 30. Damn, you were bad as hell.
Real quick.
So he didn't even know who I was. Well, he saw the 30 for 30, and he's like, damn, I know that guy.
Real quick, I have to say, I don't know, did you watch the Lakers series on HBO? I told you about it, but...
Yeah, you told me about it, and the guy who played me in it, I ended up trying to get him on a podcast, and then also the guy who played Norm Nixon in it. I love that.
Yeah, Norm Nixon's son.
Yeah, Norm Nixon's son.
Who played it?
I looked at that Lakers series, and I looked at the podcast. I said, damn, that dude looked just like Norm. They did a great job. Yeah, it was Norm Nixon's son. Yeah. But the guy who played me had these big arms, and he also double playing LeBron.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that.
He double playing LeBron in the Lakers Celtic thing. But I always loved it because there was a part in it where, you know, I know I'm on your podcast, so I can't use these choice words, but it said something. Jerry West said something about Cornbread MF, and it showed a picture of me, and I said I loved it. And a lot of people got mad. Pat Riley and other people got mad because they're like, I didn't want to be portrayed like that. I thank the people. I said, I want them to put me in that light of an MF when you talk about me and playing against the Lakers. I love it.
Yeah, it was great. Jason Clark, who was in Chappaquiddick that was shot here in Boston, he played Jerry West, and I was watching it. And West would never go into the Garden because he couldn't handle the anxiety. So West is in the limo outside, and he's listening to Most on the radio, and he goes, M&F and Cornbread. And I taped it and I sent it to Max right away. It was great.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
By Jerry West, dude. That is something.
That is something.
That's to be identified with the local. I went and spoke to him just before he passed away. He was actually in L.A. and he was down in the seats, and I walked from my radio spot, went down and spoke to him. And, you know, he gave me a nice little, brotherly handshake and, kind of laughed. And how you doing, Cornbread? And that stuff. So it was really cool.
Listen, Cedric, I don't know you well enough to call you Max, but I do know this. I'm so glad that you were a part of the show today. Thank you so, so much for taking time.
Well, you guys are the best, and you're in good
Gary
hands
brought
right
you,
now.
you bet, exactly.
And I absolutely love it. Anytime he calls, I'm going to run, and, it's been a pleasure. But, all you Celtic fans, just hold your horses, keep your pants up. The Celtics are going to be okay. They'll be fine. And when they hit their stride in the second half, if they are healthy, they are still right now the favorites for me in the NBA to win the championship again this year.
From your lips to God's ears and to the Garden.
Ooh,
there you go,
I love
that. Cedric Maxwell, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
All right. Bye-bye.
This is Kerrigan & Company. Winter's dry air can certainly take the glow out of your skin. I know it does mine. That's why I'm headed to see my friends at Sienna Aesthetic Spa in Beverly. They offer a hydrofacial that's non-invasive and delivers instant results for all skin types with no downtime. It combines cleansing, hydration, and nourishment for a radiant complexion. Their hydrofacial removes dead skin cells and extracts impurities while simultaneously delivering cleansing, hydrating, and moisturizing serum. If you're looking for immediate glow without an irritation, set up an appointment today. Go to siennaaesthetics.com. This segment of Kerrigan and Company is brought to you by Sienna Aesthetics Medical Spa. Take years off your face with the very latest technologies at Sienna Aesthetics in Beverly. All right, it's that time of the show when we wrap things up. Gary Tanguay keeping me company today. This has been a lot of fun. Cedric is just a really cool guy.
The best. The best.
I mean, honestly, I'm so sorry. He was away because it's been the All-Star break, so he goes to visit family, so that's why he couldn't be here in the studio. I'm sorry he wasn't here in the studio, but I'm sort of glad he wasn't because we would have gone on. That could have gone on for.
Oh, you could talk to Max for hours. I mean, he's lived a life.
No kidding. I mean, we didn't even get into his life. I wanted to ask him about the comparison of those fabulous teams back in the late 70s and early 80s to this team now. I'd love to hear what he, how he really feels about that.
Yeah.
And how they compare.
I just think that the attitude is a little different. And again, I sound like an old man, but he made a good point. They lost in '83 when they were swept by the Bucks, but I also think regular season games meant more. Players didn't take time off. There were no days off. There were no maintenance days. So different time.
They were tougher, I think, is what.
Well, they were tougher. They also weren't making the money.
Well, that's very true. Right. I don't think the game is any more physical now than it was then.
Oh God, no.
In fact, I think less so because they were driving the basket constantly then.
It's less physical, especially with 3 refs, and they all have to be heard from.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know how I feel about that.
Well, you and I could go on and on about this, right?
We could.
Well, listen, as I said, from his lips to God's ears, let's hope another championship is headed our direction because it sure is fun.
I think
it's fun to ride it out. I think we're going to certainly be in it for a long time, right?
I agree.
Absolutely. We do this thing. It's called the Fast Five.
Okay.
It's a rapid 5, questions.
Sure.
And we see how you answer.
Okay.
Are you ready, my friend? Here we go in 3, 2, and 1. Who is your favorite Celtics player of all time?
John Havlicek.
Very good. Who is your favorite Celtics player right now?
Jason Tatum.
What's your favorite book that Casey Sherman has written?
Oh, Helltown.
Okay. If you could pick an actor to work with that you've never had a chance to be on the set with, who would that actor be?
Robert De Niro.
And which film do you want to win Best Picture this year?
The Apprentice.
Very good. All right. You did it in 30 seconds. I'm impressed. Most people cannot do it in 30 seconds. They have to explain it. You didn't. That's very good. I do want you to explain, though, and let's explain why we brought up Casey Sherman, because Casey, as we mentioned, at the very beginning, good friend of ours here, good friend of mine, good friend of yours, a fabulous writer.
Tremendous.
And he's got all these wonderful books, many of which have turned into films.
Sure.
But a lot of these true crime stories that he wants to, he's starting to tell now in his own form. So tell everybody about this and what's coming up at the Wilbur.
Well, it's coming up at the Wilbur. It's March 26th, and you want to get tickets. It's a group of local actors that have all been seen in films when they're shot in Boston. This group of people are very talented, and if they had chosen to go to Hollywood and New York, I think they all could have hung. I mean, who knows what happens out there, but during the day, they work in Boston. They work in Massachusetts, they do the thing, and then at night, they go play on a stage. That's what we do.
Sure.
So I can speak to, Helltown and Murder in Hollywood, which is the second and third acts. They will blow you out of the water. I mean, with the Strangler story, a lot of people know about it, and Casey's done a lot of work in that. But the third act, Helltown, which involves a serial killer in Cape Cod, is crazy. It's a great book. It's nuts.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of local people that are going to be on, and it's going to be tremendous to see.
So it's a series of
it's 3 acts, and each act is based on one of his books.
Okay.
Right. So the first one involves the Boston Strangler, in which his Aunt Mary was allegedly a victim of, but she wasn't if you read Casey's book or if you watch this first act. Then the second one, A Murder in Hollywood, involves Lana Turner, and Johnny Stoppanato, and about his murder. And it's great Hollywood noir. Bugsy Malone's in it. Oh, it's great, because I love Hollywood noir. It's good stuff. And then Helltown involves a serial killer in Provincetown, which it occurred the same time as Chappaquiddick. So the Kennedy story took precedence. So a lot of people didn't know about this. Now, I don't know if I'm supposed to say it, but Casey can yell at me. But Oscar Isaac was looking at this, and Team Downey, Robert Downey Jr. wanted to take Hell Down and make it into a TV series. There's a lot of interest in Hollywood with that. It's that good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that good. And I get to play Norman Mailer, who's Office Rocker, which is tremendous.
So that's coming up March the 26th at the Wilbur.
At the Wilbur, you can get tickets now.
You can get tickets now. Go to thewilbur.com. That's where you get your tickets.
And it benefits the Ice Bucket Challenge.
And it benefits,
Frady's.
Exactly, the Frady's Foundation, which is so great. Any other big acting things coming down the pipe
I
for
do
you?
have, listen, when I say this, I sound like such a jerk. I do have a movie coming out.
Well, why does that sound like a jerk?
Well, no, it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's my
It is what it is.
I played a senator in a movie called El McKay, which was directed by James L. Brooks. And I worked with Jamie Lee Curtis and Albert Brooks. And I got to talk to both of them, which was amazing.
Great.
And Emma Mackey is a great young actress who was in the Barbie movie, who is the main character. And it was shot in Providence. And, of course, James L. Brooks is an acclaimed director. I mean, he created Taxi, Mary Tyler Moore Show, Terms of Endearment, won a number of Oscars. He was tremendous. And hanging out with Jamie Lee Curtis
it's not a bad experience.
Great. Have you watched The Bear?
I have, and she's phenomenal.
Well, she's sitting there, and one of the benefits of like working in sports, you get to meet a lot of athletes. So like when you're not really starstruck, you meet people. So she's standing next to me. We're waiting to do our next shot, and I'm just kind of a senator that's got a couple lines, but she's in it. And I just said, Jamie, can you tell me about episode 6, season 2 of The Bear, which is the fishes?
Yep.
And she took me through the whole thing, and it was amazing.
Oh.
We shot it in 3 days. She was the third choice.
Really?
Oh, yeah. One of our friends called us, and she did it. She killed it. And then I said to her I said, what's going on? And she winked at me, and she said, I can't talk about it. And then if you saw what happened.
I did see what happened.
Call Donna. She's so good.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
She's so good.
She is. She is phenomenal. When does that movie come out?
Well, they're coming back. It was supposed to be spring of 2025, but I heard they were doing some reshoots in Providence, so I don't know exactly when. Great. So spring of 2025, summer.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Anything else? 26th of March.
That's
See you at the Wilbur.
Okay, yeah.
Great. And then you just keep plugging with all the
yeah, I mean, I'm working, I still write. I have a novel, The Arm in the Fall, that you can get, which involves a washed-up sportscaster and an L.A. detective, and they find out who murders the quarterback at the Super Bowl. Rocky Suarez, and there's some interest in L.A. right now about Rocky trying to make that into a series, so
Fantastic.
I'm working on that.
Good for you. Hey, thank you for being a part of this.
Well, thanks.
I am so glad that you came in. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
You should get into a movie.
Well, we'll talk after the podcast. How about that?
Him in a movie.
Gary Tanguay, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to all of you for being part of this episode of Kerrigan and Company. Be sure you watch on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And when you go to YouTube, be sure you subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Kerrigan and Company. To find out who will keep me company and be my co-host on the next episode, be sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok. Kerrigan and Company is recorded at the Big Night Studios at the TD Garden in Boston. You can view the podcast on YouTube and listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure you tell a friend. The executive producer of Kerrigan and Company is David Thompson. Our engineer is Peter Hurley, and our social media managers are Grace Kerrigan, Colby Thompson, and Riley Thompson. See you next time.